Introduction. You felt them before they spoke. The science of quiet confidence. Why some people command attention without being loud. I was 22 when I met the person who changed how I understood presence. It was my first real job, at a regional firm in the city. The kind of place where the carpet was beige, the elevator buttons stuck, and the break room always smelled faintly of burnt coffee. I didn't have a title that mattered. Mostly, I ran errands, took notes during meetings, made copies, and stayed out of the way. But I paid attention. I watched everything. There was a man named Mr. Harrington. He was the head of finance. Maybe 58, maybe older, it was hard to tell. He dressed like he didn't care about trends, always in deep navy suits, always with polished shoes and a wristwatch that looked older than me. He didn't talk much in meetings. In fact, he didn't seem to care about talking at all. But when he entered a room, something shifted. People straightened up. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. You could almost hear chairs adjusting. And the strangest part was, he wasn't trying to be impressive. He didn't smile to be liked. He didn't interrupt. He just sat, listened, and watched, deeply. At first, I thought people respected him because of his title. But one afternoon changed that for me completely. There was a quarterly strategy meeting. A tense one. Operations had overspent. Legal was on edge. Everyone was talking over each other, rushing, defensive, explaining, justifying. I was in the back with a notepad trying to keep up. Mr. Harrington hadn't said a word. He was seated near the window, quiet, hands folded on the table, looking at each person as they spoke. And then, maybe 35 minutes in, he leaned forward slightly. No one had asked for his opinion. He didn't clear his throat. He just said this: "You're all trying to solve the wrong problem." Silence. You could have heard the air vent click on. No pushback, no eye rolls, no one asked, "What do you mean?" They just listened. Then he walked them through the numbers. Slowly, simply. No charts, no handouts, just clarity. And when he finished, he sat back like it was nothing. The tension in the room, gone. The meeting ended early. People thanked him on the way out. And I remember watching all this unfold, thinking, he barely spoke. But when he did, every word landed like a gavel. That was the day I realized something I've never forgotten. The most magnetic people don't try to be noticed. They're not loud. They don't rush. They carry themselves with a kind of gravity, an inner stillness that makes everyone else slow down too. That was the first time I saw what I now call quiet confidence. This audiobook is about that. Not fake charisma, not pretending to be more outgoing, and definitely not hacks for being liked. It's about how to build real presence without changing who you are. We've been told that charisma means being charming, talkative, funny. We've been taught to associate influence with performance. But that's not the full truth. The people who are remembered long after the room clears, they don't always say much, but they say what matters. They don't perform. They anchor. They don't force connection. They create space for others to feel seen. In this book, you'll learn how to access that kind of presence. We'll unpack the psychology of subtle influence, the nonverbal cues that speak louder than words, the posture, pacing, and energy that build trust before you even speak. You'll learn how to command respect without chasing it, how to listen in a way that disarms people, and how to create an emotional imprint that makes others feel your presence, even when you're silent. No gimmicks, no extrovert advice in disguise. Just the quiet mechanics of being someone people feel, trust, and remember. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Misconception of Charisma. When I was in my final year of university, I took a course on 20th century political theory. The class was taught by a professor named Dr. Eliot. Nobody talked much about him except to say he was old school. No slides, no jokes. Just an old blazer, a stack of papers, and stories that went deeper than dates and theories. He didn't perform. He didn't try to entertain. But within 5 minutes of the first lecture, he had everyone's attention. Not because he was loud, but because he had weight. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't smile often. But his presence said, "I've been here longer than your opinions." And somehow, that settled everyone. One day a student interrupted with a challenge. "Isn't all power just performance? Don't you have to act like you're in charge to be respected?" Dr. Eliot simply said, "Lions don't need to roar to be respected. You only bark when you're not sure anyone's listening." Then he packed up and left. That line never left me. It made me realize something profound. We confuse charisma with showmanship, but they're not the same. Showmanship is about drawing attention. Flash, charm, energy. But it fades. Presence is about holding weight, depth, stillness, certainty. And it stays. We're taught to be noticed, to fill space, to sparkle. But true presence comes from subtraction, not addition, from removing what is performative and returning to what is grounded. The science backs this up. Charisma is not built on being extroverted. It's built on 3 things. Warmth, the capacity to make others feel seen and safe. Confidence, not arrogance, but the calm certainty that you are grounded. Centeredness, emotional regulation under tension, no leaks. Presence is not about being the loudest. It's about being the most real. And when you anchor yourself, you anchor the room. In the next section, we'll explore how this presence is remembered. Why some people make emotional imprints and others fade. Part 1. The Psychology of Presence. Chapter 2. Why people remember some and forget others. I remember sitting in the back of a small interview room on the 6th floor of an office building that had no elevator and a flickering hallway light that buzzed louder than the waiting area itself. It was 1993. I had been asked to help take notes during a series of final interviews for a junior strategy role at a logistics firm. I wasn't on the hiring committee, just a silent observer in the corner. My only job was to record impressions, tone, posture, presence, what the hiring manager called intangibles. 2 candidates came in that day, both qualified on paper, both from top schools, both well-spoken. Their resumes had nearly identical credentials, and they each wore the same pressed charcoal suit that you could tell came from the same local tailor. But what happened in the room was entirely different. The first candidate, we'll call him Patrick, entered with enthusiasm. He greeted everyone with a handshake, smiled often, spoke in complete, polished sentences. He had prepared talking points, outlined his past experience, and made sure to hit every bullet on his resume. He even brought copies in a leather folder, passed them out like a man distributing leaflets, and made direct eye contact when he spoke. No one could say Patrick did anything wrong. In fact, the team nodded through much of his interview. They thanked him when he left, and he walked out with the confidence of someone who had done everything by the book. Then the second candidate arrived. Her name was Miriam. She didn't walk in fast, she didn't come in slow either. She moved with a kind of quiet deliberateness, as if she wasn't there to win anything but to observe and respond honestly. She greeted everyone, yes, but without the bright performance of charm. She simply looked at each person one by one and said, "Thank you for having me." She took her seat only after everyone else was settled. And when she began speaking, it was as if the room softened. She didn't speak quickly. She didn't have slides. She didn't even bring a folder. But every answer she gave felt like it had been earned, not rehearsed. At one point, one of the directors asked her a scenario question about supply chain bottlenecks in remote regions. She paused for several seconds, longer than most people are comfortable with, before answering. I remember that pause. Not because it was awkward, but because it felt like the entire room had leaned forward without realizing it. Miriam didn't fill silence out of fear. She used it. When she did speak, her answer wasn't dazzling, but it was layered, practical, grounded in lived experience. And you could feel something unspoken. She had done this before. Not in theory, but in the field. After the interviews, no one mentioned Patrick's folder. No one remembered his well-organized outline. But they remembered how Miriam made them feel. They remembered her clarity, her stillness, her presence. One of the senior managers said, "She listens like she's tuning a radio, like she wants to get it exactly right." It wasn't about what she said. It was how she made the room feel while she was saying it. This is the root of emotional imprinting. It's the science behind why some people stay with us long after we meet them, while others, despite saying all the right things, disappear from memory. In psychology, this ties back to how our brain responds to subtle cues, especially through the limbic system, the part responsible for emotion, memory, and bonding. What we feel is more powerful than what we hear. By the mid-1990s, researchers had identified mirror neurons, brain cells that respond not just to actions we perform ourselves, but to those we observe in others. When someone enters a room calmly, we mirror that calmness. When someone listens intently, we feel safe to speak. When someone speaks from a place of centeredness rather than performance, we unconsciously register it as trustworthiness. This is why a person can leave an impression without needing to dominate the conversation. Because people do not remember the best speaker in the room. They remember the one who made them feel seen. The one who wasn't performing. The one who gave their full presence. That's what Miriam did. She didn't need to be remembered. Which is exactly why she was. So how can you create this kind of emotional imprint? You don't need grand gestures, you need grounded behavior. Things people feel even if they don't consciously process them. Here are a few practices. First, deliberate pauses before speaking. Take a full breath. Let your words arrive after your presence does. People don't remember speed. They remember weight. 2. Give your full face when listening. Turn toward the speaker. Uncross your arms. Soften your eyes. Listen not to respond, but to understand. 3. Speak from the body, not just the head. Speak slowly enough that you can feel your own words. When your tone is connected to breath and emotion, people trust it more. 4. Hold silence without anxiety. Silence, when not rushed, becomes your ally. It gives others space to feel, not just hear you. The truth is, people will not always remember your clever answers. They will not always remember your credentials. But they will remember the emotional temperature you brought into the room. Presence isn't performance. It's how others feel when they are near your calm, your attention, your ease. In the next chapter, we'll go deeper into the engine of presence, where that inner calm comes from, how it stabilizes everything around it, and how you can cultivate it even in stressful moments. Because presence is not just about how others see you. It begins with how you hold yourself. Chapter 3. Inner stillness equals outer power. There was an old man in the neighborhood where I grew up. Everyone called him the Master. He lived above a tailor's shop on a quiet corner near the post office. He kept to himself. No family, no television. But every evening around 5 o'clock, without fail, he would walk to the local park and play chess. Not with friends. Not for competition. Just him, a weathered board, and an extra chair left open for anyone who wanted to play. At first, people thought he was odd. Too quiet. Too patient. But slowly, over time, he earned a different kind of attention. City workers, retired men, school teachers. They began sitting down across from him. And every time, the result was the same. They lost. But what was strange wasn't just that he won. It was how he won. He never celebrated. He never corrected his opponent or gave advice. He never looked like he was even trying. He sat still. Completely still. Sometimes for minutes before making a move. His eyes would rest on the board like he was reading something no one else could see. And even when the park was noisy, children playing, dogs barking, a vendor shouting from a distance, he never reacted. His calm made other people nervous. Because when someone is that still in a storm, you start to question your own footing. One afternoon, a younger man, probably in his 20s, sat across from him. He came with confidence. Quick moves, impatient taps, heavy exhales every time the master delayed. The young man tried to control the tempo. He tapped his fingers, checked his watch, smirked when he took a piece. But the master never changed pace. He sat with the same slow breath, the same heavy stillness. Eventually, the young man lost his queen, then his rook, then the game. And when he did, he stood up sharply and said, "You play like you don't care." The master smiled gently, not mockingly, and said, "If I cared about your moves, I'd never see the board clearly." That was the first time I understood that stillness is not the absence of pressure. It's the refusal to absorb pressure that doesn't belong to you. We often assume that confidence comes from dominating a room, proving ourselves, outperforming others. But the most powerful kind of confidence is internal. It does not seek applause. It does not react to noise. It does not tighten under scrutiny. It is still. This is the essence of quiet confidence. And here's the truth most people miss. You cannot create presence on the outside if there's chaos on the inside. When someone speaks from anxiety, we feel it, even if they're using the right words. When someone moves quickly, talks fast, avoids silence, we sense something beneath the surface. Our bodies know. Even if we can't explain it, we register the energy. But when someone is calm, rooted and unshaken, even in discomfort, we trust them. Not because of what they say, but because their nervous system is regulated enough to stay centered. That kind of person becomes a natural anchor in any room. There's science behind this too, long before the language of mindfulness became popular. In early studies of leadership and group dynamics in the 1980s and 90s, researchers observed that people gravitate toward those who display what they called low reactivity and high clarity. In other words, when someone doesn't emotionally react to every shift in their environment, and when they speak with slow, deliberate clarity, they are perceived as stable and therefore safe. That's leadership. That's magnetism. Not force, not control, regulation. So what does this mean for you? It means your ability to be magnetic starts long before you enter the room. It begins with how you hold yourself under pressure. It begins with how slowly you breathe before you speak. It begins with how little you need to prove while others perform. It means practicing stillness, not just when things are peaceful, but especially when things are not. Here are a few ways to cultivate this. 1. Anchor your breath. The moment you feel the urge to rush, to fill a silence, or to impress, breathe. Slowly. Not a performance breath, a real one. Let it move through your belly. Let it calm your chest. Let others watch you, not panic. 2. Notice your impulses. When someone disagrees with you, can you pause before responding? When you feel tension in a room, can you allow it without trying to fix it? The space between stimulus and response is where your presence is built. 3. Hold your own gaze. Before you hold eye contact with others, practice holding it with yourself. Look in the mirror, not for flaws, but to practice not looking away when you're not performing. The more comfortable you are with your own stillness, the more others will trust you. The master at the chessboard taught me more than strategy. He taught me how power moves. Not fast, not loud, but deep and slow. He showed me that when you stop reacting to the world starts responding to you. And that's what quiet confidence really is. In the next section, we'll shift from the psychology of presence to the social language of it. How to move, gesture, and communicate in ways that build trust, attract attention, and create connection. Without saying much at all. Because once your stillness is anchored, the way you speak and don't speak becomes your most magnetic tool. Understood. We'll shift gears slightly for chapters 4 and 5. Less narrative, more insight, practical psychology, and real-life observations that reveal how quiet people communicate power without performance. Part 2. The Art of Quiet Social Intelligence. Chapter 4. Say less. Signal more. In most rooms, people compete to be heard. They raise their voices, interrupt each other, speak quickly to appear sharp or informed. But here's the secret most of them miss. When everyone is speaking, the one who stays quiet becomes noticed, not forgotten. Quiet individuals who command attention do not do so by adding more words. They do it by mastering what happens in between words. This is where nonverbal authority lives. And it's more powerful than most people realize. Long before we developed language, our ancestors communicated through posture, expression, proximity, and stillness. Evolution shaped our bodies to read these cues instantly, even before the conscious mind could interpret them. This ancient system still governs our first impressions today. In fact, researchers in the 1970s and 80s, such as Albert Mehrabian, found that when people form judgments about others, only 7% of the impression comes from the actual words spoken. The rest, 93%, is made up of vocal tone, posture, eye movement, gestures, and spatial rhythm. This does not mean words are meaningless, but it does mean that the body carries the message first. If someone enters a room and speaks clearly, but fidgets, avoids eye contact, or hesitates with uncertainty, others sense the discrepancy. But if that same person walks in with calm shoulders, open palms, and eyes that meet others without fear or demand, they barely need to speak at all. The most magnetic people understand this. They use economy of motion. They do not over-gesture. They allow silence between words. They move their eyes slowly, not because they are shy, but because they are absorbing rather than reacting. There is weight in their stillness. When they look at you, they are not scanning, they are receiving. When they nod, it's not to rush you, but to affirm understanding. Their entire body says, "I'm here. I'm not afraid of pause. I'm not chasing attention." This quiet congruence builds trust before any words are exchanged. One of the most subtle but powerful tools is the gaze. In Western cultures, sustained but relaxed eye contact signals interest, respect, and certainty. But too much eye contact, especially if paired with tension, feels like challenge or threat. Magnetic people don't stare. They see. Their gaze lands, stays briefly, then gently moves on, like they're looking through, not at. It feels personal, not invasive. Their posture also speaks before they do. They do not shrink. They do not puff up. They stand or sit in alignment, head over spine, shoulders relaxed, chest open, but not exposed. They do not lean forward unless they choose to express urgency. They claim space without taking too much of it. This kind of control requires awareness, not performance. It comes from learning to inhabit your body fully, from making peace with stillness, from removing the unnecessary. In that sense, every unnecessary gesture is a leak of presence. The more efficient your signals, the more others tune in. This is why people who say very little but gesture deliberately, perhaps one hand movement every few sentences, often appear powerful. Because they have created a contrast, a rhythm, a sense that every movement is intentional. And when they finally speak, the words carry weight, not because they are louder, but because the silence that came before them made room for meaning. The principle is simple. The fewer words, the more weight. This does not mean you should speak in riddles or limit your voice. It means when you speak from a place of internal calm, intentional rhythm, and physical stillness, your presence does most of the work. You are not just heard. You are felt. And that is a deeper kind of communication than performance ever achieves. In the next chapter, we will explore a skill even more powerful than speaking: listening. But not the passive kind. Listening that makes people feel known, respected, and safe. The kind of listening that quietly builds influence in every room it enters. Chapter 5. Listening that makes people lean in. There are two kinds of listening. One is polite silence while waiting to speak. The other is presence. Most people have experienced both. You can feel the difference immediately. When someone is simply waiting their turn, their eyes shift, their body leans forward too soon, their nods are impatient. They are not really listening. They are preparing their next statement. Their silence is not an offering. It is a pause loaded with personal agenda. But then there is the second kind. The kind that disarms you. That slows you down. That makes you feel like the other person isn't just listening to your words, but to what you meant beneath them. That kind of listener becomes magnetic. The ancient Stoics believed that the mark of intelligence was the ability to listen deeply without the need to respond immediately. This wasn't a social tactic. It was a discipline. And long before formal studies in communication emerged, spiritual teachers, counselors, and even military strategists knew this. He who listens fully commands silently. In psychology, the most effective form of therapeutic communication is often called active reflective listening. But what it really means is this: I see you. I hear what you're saying. And I'm not rushing to change, fix, or judge it. That message, spoken or unspoken, builds rapport faster than any clever phrase. So how does one become that kind of listener? Here are several key behaviors, simple but rarely practiced. 1. Face the speaker fully. Do not multitask. Do not glance at the clock. Let your posture show you are not split between this moment and another. 2. Let their words land. Pause before responding. Even a few seconds communicates that you're reflecting. This pause gives your reply more weight and makes the speaker feel valued. 3. Mirror their tone, not their story. If they speak softly, do not interrupt with intensity. If they express pain, meet it with steadiness. Your presence should feel like a vessel, not an echo chamber. 4. Ask questions that clarify, not redirect. What made you pause there? Can you tell me more about that part? Questions like these deepen connection without stealing the focus. 5. Resist the urge to advise. Silence can be more powerful than instruction. Let your listening be the comfort, not your conclusion. When people feel heard in this way, they do something rare. They open. They relax. They remember you. Not because you gave them answers, but because you gave them space. And in that space, they found their own clarity. In professional settings, this kind of listening earns trust. In personal relationships, it creates intimacy. And in social dynamics, it makes you unforgettable. Because people remember how they felt in your presence more than what you said. Quiet confidence is not just about speaking wisely. It is about listening so completely that people lower their guard without even noticing. And when their guard is down, your influence begins. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to guard your own presence. How magnetic people use boundaries not as walls, but as signals of self-respect. You'll learn why less sharing, less explaining, and more restraint creates more pull, not less. Part 2. The Art of Quiet Social Intelligence. Chapter 6. Magnetic Boundaries. There was a man named Mr. Duma who worked in the administrative wing of my uncle's old boarding school in the Highlands. He was not a teacher. He wasn't part of the leadership. He handled logistics, classroom supplies, staff rosters, building maintenance, and student records. Yet every student who passed through that school remembered him. Not because he told jokes, not because he was warm, but because he was untouchable. And not in the way that suggests arrogance. He was the kind of man who never raised his voice and never stayed longer than necessary. And still, when he entered a room, the atmosphere adjusted itself. I visited the school once when I was a teenager. I watched from a distance as students who barely listened to their teachers stood straighter when Mr. Duma passed. They greeted him not with fear, but with formality. He responded with a nod, a slight one. Rarely a smile, never a story. There were rumors about him, of course, that he had served in the army, that he had once worked in government, that he had lost a son. No one knew for sure, because he never offered explanations. And what struck me most was this. In a place where most adults tried to earn respect by asserting their rank or disciplining boys into obedience, he earned it by revealing almost nothing. And yet everyone felt they knew him. Not through information, but through impression. That was my first real lesson in magnetic boundaries. We tend to believe that connection comes from openness. And yes, at times it does. But power, real, settled, grounded power, often comes from restraint. The people we cannot stop thinking about are often the ones who do not tell us everything. The ones who do not fill the air with personal history, opinions, or emotion. The ones who offer presence, not personal disclosure. Why? Because restraint creates contrast. It leaves space. And in that space, people become curious. Oversharing is not intimacy. It is often a sign of insecurity. And in many cases, it dilutes presence. The more we explain ourselves, the more we invite interpretation. The more we rush to justify, the more we seem uncertain. The more we speak when silence would suffice. The more we give others control over our image. Magnetic people do not do this. They speak when there is reason. They withhold when there is no necessity. They are not mysterious for effect. They are private by principle. And because of this, their presence grows in people's minds after they leave the room. A few key habits of magnetic restraint. 1. They pause before answering personal questions. Not because they are hiding, but because they are considering. This pause alone signals that they are not impulsive with access to their inner world. 2. They do not over-explain. If they decline an invitation, they say, "I can't make it." Not, "I'm sorry, I'm overwhelmed, I haven't slept, and I have laundry." The absence of justification creates a sense of grounded certainty. 3. They say no, without decoration, not harshly, but firmly. And when they say it, it lands as final. 4. They speak with minimal detail when it isn't needed. Not because they are secretive, but because they are not performing vulnerability for attention. Silence, used intentionally, becomes magnetic. It creates questions in others, not anxiety in you. It builds presence because it removes pressure. And it allows the mind of others to do what minds are designed to do. Fill in the gaps. Mr. Duma did not become powerful by chasing respect. He earned it by containing himself. And in that container, he became larger than life. Let us now move from containment to energy. From holding your boundaries to broadcasting your presence before you speak. Part 3. Becoming Unforgettable. Chapter 7. Your energy introduces you. There was a young woman named Celestine who used to visit my aunt's shop once a month. She never arrived in a hurry. She wore linen dresses, flat shoes, and carried a small leather-bound notebook that looked as if it had been passed down to her. She did not speak much, but she always made people feel like they needed to behave better when she entered the room. Children stopped squirming. Men stopped raising their voices. Women offered her the better chair. No one could say exactly why. She was not wealthy. She did not wear jewelry or speak of influence. But when she sat down, the air changed. Even the way she closed the door behind her was different. She didn't push it, she placed it shut. One day I asked my aunt, "Who is she?" She smiled without answering directly. Then she said something I never forgot. Some people bring themselves into a room before their voice does. That is what this chapter is about. Your energy precedes you. Before you smile. Before you speak. Before you choose a seat or ask a question. People register your rhythm, your breath, your pacing, your stillness, your tension, if you carry it. Even before conversation begins, the body of others has already formed its impression of you. In the early 1990s, studies in somatic psychology began exploring how unspoken signals affect group dynamics. Researchers noted that individuals who entered a room with slower movement, deeper breath, and lower vocal tone were more likely to be perceived as in control, self-possessed, and trustworthy. Not because of what they said, but because of what their nervous system communicated on a primal level. Magnetic individuals rarely rush. Their movements are deliberate not because they are trying to look elegant, but because their mind is not racing. They walk as if their time matters. They turn their head slowly, not lazily, but with precision. They sit with structure, not rigidity. Their energy is unhurried, and that unhurried energy speaks for them before any words do. It tells others, "I know who I am. I am not here to prove anything. I will not be rushed." You can train this. It is not about changing your personality. It is about tuning the instrument before you play. Here are daily practices. 1. Slow your transitions. Do not fling open doors. Do not plop into chairs. Place yourself. Enter deliberately. Let others feel your movement as a message. 2. Breathe low before you enter a room. Let your breath drop into your belly. Let your rib cage expand slowly. One deep breath before a conversation shifts your rhythm, and others will unconsciously sync to it. 3. Scan the space before entering fully. Let your eyes take in the room before you step in fully. This shows you are aware, not reactive. 4. Do not apologize for existing. Walk into a room as if you belong there, not with arrogance, but with quiet readiness. Presence does not ask permission. Celestine never announced herself. But when she entered my aunt's shop, she never went unnoticed, because she was composed before she was expressive. And that kind of energy introduces you more powerfully than any title, compliment, or outfit ever could. In the next chapter, we'll explore how what you reveal and what you don't creates intrigue, connection, and power. Because what you say matters. But what you withhold when done skillfully matters even more. Not just reflection. Part 3. Becoming unforgettable. Chapter 8. The Power of Mystery and Selective Vulnerability. There's a principle in influence few people discuss. The more you reveal, the more you reduce your mystique. We're often told that openness is the path to trust, that vulnerability builds connection, that honesty is always magnetic. But this is only partly true. There's a difference between vulnerability that connects and vulnerability that collapses. There's also a difference between openness that builds curiosity and oversharing that drains energy. Magnetic people understand this. They know that attention is not earned by saying everything, but by saying just enough. They share with restraint, not as a way to withhold, but as a way to signal depth. Let's clarify a few terms. Mystery is not secrecy. It's simply the absence of excess explanation. Selective vulnerability is not avoidance. It's the deliberate shaping of what's revealed, how and when. Together they create pull. They give people a reason to listen longer and lean in more. Why does this work? Because humans are naturally pattern-seeking creatures. When we hear part of a story, we automatically want the rest. When someone shares a meaningful detail, but does not explain it, we become mentally engaged. This is known in classical psychology as the Zeigarnik effect. Our minds hold on to incomplete information more intensely than completed ones. This means that the sentence, "I used to believe something that wasn't true about myself," carries more psychological weight than a full confession. Why? Because it invites the listener's imagination, not just their ears. This doesn't mean you should be cryptic. It means you should shape what you share like a sculptor, not a faucet. Too many people give everything away too quickly, hoping it will buy closeness. But overexposure rarely builds intimacy. It builds familiarity, and familiarity too soon collapses tension. Magnetic presence requires tension. Just enough openness to be human. Just enough restraint to remain unfolding. Here's how magnetic people reveal themselves. They share emotion, not excess detail. "That was a difficult time," is often more powerful than recounting the event hour by hour. They let their tone carry the weight, not their words. Presence is often felt in the way something is said, not the quantity of what is said. They are willing to be seen, but not explained. When someone asks, "Why don't you talk about that more?" they respond with, "Some things I keep for myself." And that response deepens their mystique, not because it hides, but because it signals self-respect. Selective vulnerability also creates emotional gravity. Because when you speak less, others listen more. When you reveal with discretion, others feel honored to receive it. When you resist the urge to be understood too quickly, you give people something worth staying for. To practice this, 1. Stop narrating your life in real time. Not everyone needs to know your every fear, dream, or thought. Let your presence, not your history, do the work. 2. Disclose when it adds weight, not when it relieves pressure. Vulnerability shared to connect is powerful. Vulnerability shared to offload anxiety is heavy for others and erodes your presence. 3. Leave moments unfinished. "That changed me," is enough. Let silence carry the rest. The goal is not to become mysterious for performance. The goal is to be measured, to know what you keep sacred, and to let that sacredness radiate. Now let's move to the silent signals of the body, where real presence speaks louder than words. Chapter 9. Magnetic Body Language Without Trying. Before you say a word, your body has already spoken. Before you shake a hand. Before you nod. Before you take a seat. Your posture, pacing, and facial tension have already registered. And in many cases, that first silent message is the one people remember most. We often underestimate how much of our influence is communicated through the subconscious channel of body language. According to legacy research from the 1970s and 1980s in social psychology, up to 90% of emotional meaning is communicated non-verbally. That means you can say all the right words, but if your posture is collapsed, if your breath is shallow, if your gestures are frantic, people will feel tension, not confidence. The most magnetic people do not perform body language. They embody a few timeless principles. First, stillness over stiffness. They do not freeze their bodies into power poses. Instead, they settle. They ground their feet. They let their shoulders drop. They give their breath space in the chest. Stillness, not stiffness, is what conveys command. Dusra. Deliberate, not dramatic. Magnetic gestures are rare and purposeful. When they raise a hand, they hold it steady. When they nod, it's subtle, not eager. When they turn their head, it's slow. Every movement feels like a choice, not a reaction. Centered posture. The spine is upright, not exaggerated. Chin is neither tucked nor raised. Their head rests over their chest, not leaning forward. This physical alignment feels like alignment of character, and others pick up on it. One of the most underused cues in magnetic presence is still head movement. People who constantly bob their head while listening or shift their weight when standing unconsciously signal restlessness or approval seeking. Still heads, still eyes, still hands. These are the hallmarks of someone who does not need to manage others' perceptions. They sit inside their own presence. And what about the eyes? Forget what you've heard about intense eye contact. Magnetic people see. They do not scan. They look directly, but gently. They move their eyes with intention, and only when needed. This kind of gaze feels anchored, not performative. It makes others feel seen without feeling scrutinized. A few practices you can begin today. 1. Walk 20% slower. Not to appear lazy, but to send the signal. I am not rushed. I move with intention. 2. Take a breath before you speak. Let the pause signal self-trust. Let the stillness invite attention. 3. Anchor your hands. Rest them gently when not in use. When you do gesture, do so from your center, not your shoulders. 4. Mirror with discretion. Let your body match the energy of the room without mimicking its chaos. Magnetic body language is not a performance tool. It is a reflection of your internal rhythm. If you move with care, others will feel cared for. If you rest in your frame, others will settle near you. And if your gestures are few, your presence becomes the loudest signal in the room. Let us now begin to shape your influence, not just in how you move, but how you inspire, lead, and shift others, without performing at all. Part 4. Living with Quiet Power. Chapter 10. Influence without performance. Influence is not about convincing. It's not about persuasion, manipulation, or charisma in the theatrical sense. It is about being someone others trust, follow, and consult, without being asked to perform for it. Quiet influence is rooted in 4 timeless traits. First, consistency without noise. People who influence others in silence are those who show up the same way across time. They are not volatile. They are not driven by mood. Their steadiness becomes a reference point in other people's storms. Dusra. Boundaried compassion. They are kind but not desperate to be liked. They listen but do not absorb others' chaos. Their care is structured. And structure builds respect faster than emotion ever could. Mundam. Depth over volume. They speak when it matters, and their words come from reflection, not impulse. They are rarely the first to react. But when they do, others pause. Their ideas are processed. Their tone is even. And people remember how it felt to be in their clarity. Self-possession. They do not ask for validation. They do not market themselves constantly. Instead, they make quiet decisions that echo loudly. They act with a kind of moral authority. Not because they say they have it, but because they live it. Now let's ground this in a story. When I was younger, there was a coach at my school named Mr. Rene. He was not the loud type. He didn't bark at players. He never once raised his voice in the 2 years I knew him. He would walk the field slowly during practice, clipboard in hand, whistle always in his pocket, but never around his neck. He didn't interrupt drills. He watched. And then, every so often, he would call one player aside, quietly. He would lean in, say a single sentence, and walk away. No speech. No correction in front of the group. Just one observation, carefully delivered. Within weeks, those players started improving. Not just physically, but mentally. They took more ownership. They grew more focused. They weren't just coached. They were trusted. And they wanted to earn his trust back. Because when someone you respect says little, every word they say carries more weight. You remember it longer. You absorb it deeper. That's influence without performance. It's the understated presence that moves people. Not because it demands attention, but because it holds clarity. If you want to be influential in this way, begin with your presence, not your persuasion. Stay emotionally regulated when others are reactive. Say less, but mean more. Let people come to you by being the kind of person they want near their decision-making. Move in a way that reflects who you are, even when no one is watching. Because true influence is never loud. It is built in how you live, not how you perform. Now let us turn to something even more paradoxical. The magnetic transformation that happens when you stop trying to be noticed altogether. Chapter 11. When you stop trying, they start noticing. Many people spend their lives trying to be seen. They speak often. They smile constantly. They adjust themselves to every room they enter. They try to fit the image of what's expected, hoping someone, anyone, will affirm them. But the truth is this: effortful visibility rarely leads to respect. In fact, the more someone tries to be magnetic, the more others sense the effort. And effort, when used to chase validation, pushes people away. So what actually draws attention in a lasting way? It's not cleverness. It's not beauty. It's not charm. It's detachment plus depth. Let's break that down. First, detachment. You are not obsessed with being understood, praised, or chosen. You do not chase approval. You don't adjust yourself like a mirror trying to please every viewer. You know who you are. And if others do not see it, that's no longer your burden. This detachment removes anxiety from your energy. And without anxiety, others finally relax around you. Dusra. Depth. You have done the inner work. You are not loud, but you are solid. You have convictions, but you do not need others to adopt them. You have thoughts, but you do not need to dominate the conversation. You carry more in silence than most carry in conversation. And here is the paradox. The moment you stop needing attention, the moment you stop adjusting to gain approval, you become more visible because people are drawn to those who are at home within themselves. Not loud, not flashy, just anchored. Let me give you a visual metaphor for this. Imagine two flames. One flickers constantly, trying to stay alive, thin, reactive, weak. The other burns steadily, low, quiet, unbothered by wind. That second flame doesn't call for attention, but it's the one you want to sit beside. The same applies to people. Those who hold themselves quietly draw others in. There was a woman I once worked with named Nadine. She didn't attend many social gatherings. She sat at the edge of group meetings, listening more than speaking. She rarely smiled unless it was real. She did not offer opinions unless asked. And when she did, it was with such clarity that the entire conversation shifted. People often said afterward, "What did Nadine think?" Even when she had said nothing. Because her silence had a presence to it. Not emptiness, not passivity. It was the silence of someone who didn't need to prove anything. When you drop the need to perform, you make space for others to experience the real you. And that realness, unpackaged, grounded, steady, is unforgettable. So ask yourself, where am I still performing? Where am I still trying to be liked rather than being true? Where do I tighten or shift just to be seen? Begin removing those layers. Let your silence carry meaning. Let your detachment become your confidence. Let your stillness speak first. In the final chapter, we'll move from principle to practice. You will learn how to sustain this presence daily through structure, rituals, and a quiet rhythm that keeps you aligned. Because magnetism is not created in a moment. It is maintained through how you live. Quiet authority. Part 4. Living with Quiet Power. Chapter 12. The Quiet Code. Daily Practices. By now, you've seen that magnetic presence is not performance. It is not strategy. It is a way of being, cultivated from within and radiated outward through rhythm, restraint, and steadiness. But like any state of being, it is not sustained by inspiration alone. It must be practiced. Not as a chore, but as a quiet discipline. A way of returning to yourself before the world pulls you out of alignment. Let's call this your quiet code. This isn't a long list of rules. It is a short, daily rhythm. A simple structure that strengthens your centeredness so that others feel it without you ever needing to speak about it. It happens in 3 parts. First, morning calibration. Set your rhythm before the world sets it for you. Before you speak to anyone, move your body in silence. It could be a slow stretch, a short walk, or simply standing still with your feet grounded and eyes closed. Then, take a few deep breaths. Inhale through the nose. Let the breath reach your belly. Exhale slowly through the mouth. Repeat this at least 3 times. This calibrates your nervous system. It anchors you in your body before your mind is pulled in 100 directions. If you can begin your day anchored, the noise of others will feel softer. You will respond instead of react. You will hold your space without guarding it. Dusra. Micro-presence rituals. Moments of intentional stillness during the day. Most people speed through transitions. They rush from one interaction to another, without ever resetting. You don't need to retreat to silence for hours. You need 2 or 3 moments each day to return to yourself. Here are a few ways. Before walking into a room, pause, inhale. Lift your spine. Exhale slowly. Before speaking, place your feet flat on the ground. Feel your breath, then respond. When overwhelmed, step away for 60 seconds. Feel your pulse. Slow your breath. Return when your calm is restored. These rituals are not for display, they are internal realignments. Private, invisible. But their impact radiates. Mundram. Evening reflection. Separate the noise from your truth. Before you sleep, take 5 minutes to ask, where today did I feel centered? Where did I leave myself to please or perform? What silence did I hold wisely? What noise did I absorb unnecessarily? You don't need to write anything, just review. Let your body feel the truth. Let your system digest the day, not with guilt, but with clarity. Magnetic people are not perfect. They are tuned in. And tuning requires frequent stillness. When practiced daily, this quiet code sharpens your presence. It strengthens your energy. And it ensures that you live on your own frequency, not constantly adjusting to others. It is quiet work, but it leaves a powerful trace. Closing message. Minor words. They feel you because you feel you. There's a woman I used to visit in my childhood. She was a widow, perhaps in her 70s, who lived at the end of a gravel road in a modest stone house wrapped in ivy. Her home always smelled of dried herbs and old books. The air inside was quiet, not empty, but settled. When you sat with her, she didn't rush conversation. She stirred her tea with both hands. She answered questions only when she was ready. And she had a way of looking at you, not to judge, not to entertain, but to truly see. I once asked her why she lived alone in such quiet. She said something I never forgot. When you become good company for yourself, you stop needing the world to entertain you. That line stayed with me, because in that moment I realized what presence really is. It's not about being impressive. It's not about standing out. It's about being so at home in yourself that others feel at home in your presence too. If you've made it to this point in the audiobook, I want you to remember this above all else. People feel you most clearly when you feel yourself most clearly. Not when you say more, not when you push harder, but when your stillness becomes a signal. When your presence holds itself, when your silence says, "I know who I am. You're welcome to meet me here." That is quiet confidence, and it stays with people long after you've left the room. You are not here to be louder. You are here to be true. Let the silence work for you. Let your rhythm slow others down. Let your presence speak before your words arrive. You are already becoming that person, the one they feel, before you ever say a word.